Don't look around. Just listen. He's here in the house. I saw him by the back stair. He shouldn't even know the code. I swear to you, I locked the door. What? If we make a sound, he'll hear us. You need to get up right now, quietly. You're sure?
Don't move. Don't even breathe. The whisper came from a place of pure terror. But Lena had no time to question it. Mrs. Delacourt's body lay motionless beneath scattered linens, her eyes wide with fear as heavy footsteps crept closer. The lights had gone out minutes earlier. The intruder was inside, now searching, hunting, choosing his moment. And Lena knew one thing: if he discovered the truth, neither of them would make it out alive. This is the story of a maid forced to fake her boss's death to save them both. If this grabbed you, comment your city below. Lena had spent years working quietly in the sprawling, sunlit mansion on the edge of Crestwood Heights, a neighborhood where the streets were lined with luxury cars and the homes carried stories of old money. She had arrived in the country 8 years earlier, chasing the hope of a better life. As a maid, she scrubbed floors, polished silverware, and ironed silk sheets with the kind of dedication that made her almost invisible. But inside, she carried dreams of saving enough to bring her daughter from overseas. Dreams of building a new beginning far from the hardship she had escaped. The family she worked for, the Delacourts, lived in a world untouched by struggle. Mrs. Delacourt, the lady of the house, was elegant, proper, and always impeccably dressed. She rarely spoke more than necessary, and though she wasn't unkind, her gaze sometimes carried a coldness that reminded Lena of the distance between their lives. Still, Lena respected her. She respected everyone. That was how she survived. Each morning began the same way. Lena unlocked the back door before sunrise, slipped on her apron, and started her routine. She moved room to room like a quiet breeze, her presence barely felt. She preferred it that way. Invisibility meant safety, at least. That's what she believed. But over the past few weeks, she had noticed things that didn't feel right. Cars idling too long near the property. Shadows lingering at the gates. Strange phone calls that Mrs. Delacourt dismissed as wrong numbers, but left her pale and shaken. The tension built slowly, like a faint hum beneath the floorboards. Then there was the man Lena saw watching the house from across the street. He pretended to be checking his phone, but his gaze kept drifting back to the mansion, specifically to the windows of the rooms where Mrs. Delacourt spent most of her day. Lena tried to ignore it, telling herself it was nothing but a knot tightened in her chest. Something was coming. She didn't know what. But life, she would soon learn, was preparing to tear away her illusion of safety. It started 3 days later, when the air felt heavier than usual, and the morning silence carried an uneasy stillness. Lena arrived at the mansion as always, but the moment she stepped inside, she sensed something was wrong. The curtains were still drawn, the alarms hadn't been armed the night before, and the door to the study, normally locked, was slightly ajar. Inside, drawers had been rummaged through. Papers were scattered on the floor like discarded secrets. Mrs. Delacourt stood in the corner, trembling slightly, her phone clutched tight in her hand. She looked up when Lena entered, her eyes filled with something Lena had never seen on her face before: fear. The police had already been called earlier that morning, she explained. Someone had broken in during the night but left without taking anything. The strange part was that nothing of value had been touched, only documents, files, personal information. Lena listened, her heart pounding. She couldn't shake the image of the man who had been watching the house days earlier. Hours later, as Lena cleaned the upstairs hallway, she overheard 2 officers quietly discussing the situation. Their tone was grim. This wasn't a random burglary, it was targeted. Someone wanted something from the Delacourts, and they were willing to cross boundaries to get it. That evening, after the officers left, Mrs. Delacourt tried to go about her day as though nothing had changed. But Lena noticed the way her hands shook when she held her teacup. She noticed the way she kept glancing toward the windows, as if expecting someone to appear. The next day brought an escalation Lena hadn't expected. As she was sweeping the front steps, a different car appeared, the same make and model she had seen days earlier, but a different license plate. Again, it lingered too long. Again, the driver's gaze fixed on the mansion. Lena stepped back inside, locking the door behind her. Something urged her to speak, but she hesitated. Would Mrs. Delacourt believe her? Would she dismiss her concerns the way people often dismiss the fears of someone like her, a woman of color? An immigrant, a maid. She pushed the thought away. She had no time for pride. What mattered was safety. Later that afternoon, she finally gathered the courage to tell Mrs. Delacourt what she had been seeing. At first, the woman seemed skeptical. But when Lena described the man in detail, the same man who had been lingering near the approaches, Mrs. Delacourt's face drained of color. She whispered that her husband had been receiving threats. Business rivals. People capable of anything. But she insisted everything was under control. That night, Lena stayed late to finish her work. The house was quiet, too quiet. She was cleaning the dining room when she heard what sounded like footsteps outside the window. Slow, deliberate, too close. Her breath caught. She peeked through the curtain. A shadow moved across the lawn. The same man. The fear that clamped down on her chest was suffocating. She didn't know what to do, but instinct told her one thing. Mrs. Delacourt wasn't safe. And neither was she. The moment came with a suddenness that left Lena frozen. She was wiping down the marble counter when the security lights outside flickered once, twice then went out completely. Darkness swallowed the backyard. The house fell silent. Lena's pulse thundered in her ears. She rushed toward the living room, where she found Mrs. Delacourt pacing, agitated. Before Lena could speak, a noise shattered the quiet. A soft click near the back door. Someone was inside. The air tightened. Lena grabbed Mrs. Delacourt's arm, whispering urgently for her to follow. They slipped into the pantry, the only place without windows. Lena's mind raced. She had seen enough fear in her life to recognize real danger. Outside the thin pantry door, footsteps moved slowly through the kitchen. Heavy, intentional. Searching, Lena's breathing grew shallow. She needed to protect them both. She thought fast, too fast to be scared. Then she turned to Mrs. Delacourt and whispered the impossible, "Ma'am. Pretend you're dead." Confusion washed over the woman's face, but Lena pressed her down beneath a fallen stack of storage linens, covering her partially to make the scene look frantic and real. The footsteps stopped right outside. The door creaked open. A figure stood there, silhouetted in the dim emergency lights. He scanned the room slowly, his gaze landing directly on Lena. She forced her body to stay still, trembling only on the inside. He stepped forward, closer, closer. Until, dear audience, where are you watching from? Drop your city name in the comments. The intruder's eyes narrowed as he studied the pantry. For one long, merciless moment, Lena was sure he would lunge forward. But a sudden burst of sirens erupted outside the house. Red and blue lights flashed through the thin cracks in the shelves. The man cursed under his breath, retreating quickly, his footsteps pounding toward the back door. Moments later, officers stormed the house. They found the door forced open, the yard disturbed, and footprints leading to the neighbor's property. Lena helped Mrs. Delacourt stand, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Relief washed through her, but so did a deep exhaustion. The police confirmed it wasn't a random attack. The intruder had been targeting the Delacourts for weeks, and Lena had unknowingly become part of the danger, simply by being there. In the days that followed, Mrs. Delacourt's relationship with Lena changed profoundly. The woman who once maintained a cool distance now looked at her with gratitude, admiration, and something closer to respect. Lena's bravery had saved her life. But for Lena, the impact ran deeper. She had lived her entire life navigating a world where people like her were often overlooked, underestimated, or mistreated. A world where her fears were dismissed simply because of who she was. Yet in the darkest moment, she had risen up because she wanted recognition. But because danger left her no choice but to act. Her story is not just about fear or survival. It's about courage pushed into existence by injustice. And you? What would you have done in that pantry? Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more powerful stories.